So now we're going to bring in the time element. So in the previous example, we looked at only the net requirement. So now we're going to bring in the time element. So we have the master production schedule. Okay, so remember this structure. So we're going to bring in master production schedule, which is a list of how many units of the end product that you need. And we have the bill of materials. We have the inventory data. Okay, we already looked at it. Now we're going to bring in the lead time information as well. Okay, and we are also going to make it a little more interesting. So we have two products. Okay, so the first one is A. So your on hand and the requirements. So we have A. Okay, and then we have AA. AA's bill of material is this. So in addition to ABC from before, we have AA as a parent as well. So the on hand, okay, or like that, except now we have AA as well, and let's assume that there is no AA on hand. So the required are, so A and AA are both parents, so there won't be any requirement. For B, it is same as here, 2 for A, and that's it. For C, it is 3 for A, that's it. For D you need 2 for B from the first bill of material, and you need 3 for AA. Okay, and then E, you need 3 and 1 for B, 3 for B and 1 for C. Then F, you need 2 for C from the first bill of material, and you also need 2 for AA. Okay. Now in addition, we are now going to bring in the lead time information. So each of these items have lead times in weeks. Okay, so these are weeks. So we have 6 weeks, and let's assume that we need 50 units of A and 10 units of AA in week 6. Okay. So this is called our master production schedule. Now the MRP computations are done in inventory records like this. So it'll have columns for each week, and then there will be rows for different aspects of the inventory. So here we have gross requirement, scheduled receipts, planned on hand, projected on hand, net requirement, and planned order releases. Okay. Now scheduled receipt is the purchase orders or production orders that are already out there, like this part. So this purchasing data. Okay. Let's assume there is one purchasing data for item A in week 1 of 10 units. Okay, so that also must be given. Okay. Now these computations, sometimes some people have more rows than what I have, some people have less than this. Okay, but this is typical of how the MRP computations will be done. So gross requirements are computed exactly like how we did here, except that instead of looking at just one number, we have to look at per week. For each week, what is the requirement, right? So item A, the requirement comes from, so the gross requirement comes from there. We might as well have several other requirements. We have only one in the book, there is only one, but it's very likely that we can have as many as we want. So that comes in down here. Then we have scheduled receipt, and projected on hand we start with, so here we are at the beginning of week 1. So the first projected on hand is what is actually available, and that comes from here. That's our on hand. That after After that, you have to compute what will be projected on hand at the beginning of each of these weeks. Okay. So this is at the beginning of week 1. So in week 2, the beginning of week 2, all right. So it will be what we started out with and what are the inventories that are getting added to stock and what are the inventories that are taken out of stock. Okay. So we have here, okay, we start with so this is beginning inventory. So whatever happened in the first week, we'll have to calculate that. So projected on hand, right? And we're going to add whatever is scheduled to be received during that week. So that's coming into stock. Okay. Plus any net requirement, okay, that needs to be taken care of. So net requirements will have to be ordered and brought in. So net requirements will come in. Okay. And then the gross requirement is what goes out. So that's our demand. So minus gross requirement. Okay. So that is the formula. So now we can copy that across. Okay. So these are the projected on hand for each week, and remember that's the beginning of the week. Okay. Now net requirement row is, so that's our projected on hand at the beginning of the week, right? All right. So if, okay, what's going to be available, so that's our demand. So what is available, okay, so project beginning inventory and scheduled receipt, that's what's going to be available to you to meet the demand gross requirement, right? So if, okay, we need to either we need to use the max formula, all right? It's either 0 or it is the difference between that and subtract these two from it. So if that plus that is not sufficient to meet the gross requirement, then this will be positive and that will be our net requirement. If C65 is less than these two values, then scheduled receipt and projected on hand is sufficient to meet the demand, so no net requirement. So that number will be negative in that case. So the max formula will give you 0 for net requirement. Copy that. So in each of these cases, the available, so 10 plus 10 was available, the requirement was 0. So you don't have any net requirement. So you got 0 minus 10 is minus 20 here, and 0. The larger of the two is 0. So here it is 20 plus 0. Okay, so no requirement. So you have 0 minus 20 minus 0. So net requirement is 0, and on and on and on. And here it is 50 minus 20 minus 0, so 30, and 30 is the net requirement. Okay. Now when you have net requirement, that has to be ordered lead time ahead so that it will come in right when it is needed, right when the net requirement is required. Okay. And we can do this using the offset function. Okay. Offset function works like this. See, offset. Okay. So you start with the reference point. So let's say that's what I want. Okay. All right. So, and then in the second, and then you give a row. So that's the reference point, starting point. And then you give a row number and column number to offset from there. Okay. First is row number. Okay. You don't want to offset from that row up or down. So that will be 0. And the second is column. How many columns you want to offset? That's the lead time. Okay? And the lead time must always come from there. So press F4. All right. So now if you copy that, okay, so you don't need, well, you can copy it over that too. So this reflects. So now suppose if you change, if the lead time is 2, then automatically it will be offset by 2 instead of 1. Okay, so now we have completed the requirement of A. So if you need 50 units of A in week 6, then you have to order 30 units in week 5 because you already have 10 units on hand and you have 10 units coming in.